one of the big things in mitigation you have to remember is it's avoid, minimize, and then mitigate, right? But if we don't have a good sense of what are the good places or the important places that we want to avoid or minimize our impact on to begin with, you know, we shouldn't even be getting to mitigation. And so I think what happens here, and I just quickly on Kathy's point, with transportation, these transportation projects have huge mitigation components to them, huge, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And if you've driven around, you see these little cloverleaf, you know, fake wetlands that all the data points to does not work, period. They don't work. They do not provide the function. And I'll just end this on, if you have a system like mitigation that is essentially losing 70 or 80% of the function of the system that it's replacing, and you do that over and over and over again on mega projects on highways and everything else, you can't get there. You cannot recover Puget Sound in that context, period. And we get that, and we're going to work with our partners to try to address it. But we got to do that in a creative way that, again, I think it all stems from understanding where's a good place to grow and where's a bad place to grow, and then doing things that encourage growth in the right places and discourage growth in the wrong places, and that's what we're going to try to make happen.
I wouldn't want us to give up too quickly on the whole notion of wetland mitigation, though. I appreciate what you're saying from a roads perspective, but we do a lot of wetland mitigation, and well, recognize what it takes is a kind of a persistent monitoring and management, and in the private sector we can do that more specifically, I think, but our record in wetland mitigation is very high, and I think there's potential there. I would agree with you, a whole bunch of small little wetlands with some alder twigs in them does not constitute mitigation, but true mitigation banking, where we're following up and making sure for the 5 and 10 and 15 years that it takes for those things to fully be producing, that we understand that's part of the cost too. It wasn't just the installation.
That's a great point. I mean, I just would commend you. I mean, that's, and a lot of, you know, frankly, one of the major problems is a lot of either companies or otherwise are not, you know, big like you guys and can't afford to build that sort of into the metrics of their business. So the O&M costs, the operation and maintenance costs, is a huge component of the problem.
I'm not sure I can afford to do it either, because I still have a customer that's paying the same price for the house as the competitor, and one of the things that I would ask
well, I commend you for doing
well, I appreciate that, but we all need to be doing that. We all need to be treated the same, and so yes, I become a target because I'm the largest, and so the enforcement official goes to me first, and in fact we work with them cooperatively. But what they don't do is go to the guy who's doing 11 lots and not doing it very well and shortcutting the process. And so we have to figure out some enforcement and education methods that make sure that this is consistent. I have to check my fire sprinkler in my house for the backflow preventer every year and certify it. And that's something I have to do as a homeowner. And so if I don't do that, I get called up by the city. You didn't do this. This is a fire hazard. So why not something along those lines? You did. I inspected your wetland, and it isn't functioning. You didn't do it. You're responsible, and you lien their house. You talk to the homeowners association. There's a cost to doing that. And the problem, just like in transportation, is all the costs are not included. It's the initial installation. You need to recognize there's a lot of cost. So cost brings me then to your regional point, and I appreciate your going relatively slow on that, because we do need to understand it before we just create a whole new platform for government, another layer of government. But we do business in 6 counties, and I lost count of the number of cities, fire districts, sewer districts, water districts, city councils, county councils that we need to work with, not to mention state and federal regulations, to build the same house in each one of those communities is a complete nightmare. And I'm not suggesting that we go to one government and, you know, but a building code or a SEPA code is interpreted literally 300 different ways depending on the project and the condition and the administrator. And so you don't get what you originally sought out to get because it's interpreted 300 different ways.
I think, you know, in a way, we're in a race against time if we're serious about protecting and restoring the health of Puget Sound. And I think we have learned quite a few things, and one of them is that the incredible fragmentation of decision-making and the lack of enforcement of our existing rules and regulations has created this really confusing situation for everybody, including citizens who, on one day may have an enforcer coming down because of their septic system, and on the next day see the county just pave over a wetland or a restoration project. And there's a lot of cynicism out there that this new effort to save the sound is going to mean anything. And I think we need to grab the urgency of the problem, and we need to really deal with the fact that there's a lot of disbelief that we're really going to make a difference. And when people are cynical, they start thinking about me, and that they feel like, well, what they do, they're going to get theirs because nobody's really looking out for the public at large. So I really think we've got some tough things to deal with, and some hard truths that we need to face as a region. People say, oh, if we do education, voluntary measures will take care of Puget Sound. No, we know that that's not the case. We can't go the voluntary route. We don't have time, let alone people may or may not decide to do the right thing based on what they see around them. People don't like to pay taxes. People don't like to pay fees. This is going to cost some money, but in the long run, it's going to also save money because Mother Nature is out there as the most cost-efficient way to handle rain, for example. Mother Nature does it for us for free, and yet people say, we can pave it over and then kind of recreate Mother Nature. No, that's probably the most expensive way to go.
And I would say that Puget Sound is one of the driving forces of our economy. So, in fact, the reason we have more jobs than the rest of the nation, the reason that we have more people moving in here is because people love Puget Sound and what it brings. And so I can't run a business, we can't grow unless we have a thriving community. And community is defined as the natural community as well as the built community. And so I'm absolutely an advocate. This is an economic issue as well as an environmental issue. My issue, if I could just take one more second, is it's everybody's issue. And so sometimes I feel just a little bit like the guy that is carrying the weight of the world here, that absolutely there are impacts from new homes being built. But new churches, new schools, new office buildings, new fire stations, new everything are creating stormwater. But really, there's, 1.5 million households here today, and not very many of them that were built, pre-1990 have any kind of regulatory control on. That house in Wallingford that we point to from a GMA perspective, yeah, it's nifty in terms of its density and the like. It doesn't have any stormwater control, and it doesn't have any green practices. It doesn't have any of those things. So the real impact is coming from the people that are already here who have said, I've got mine, I'm not creating an impact, you go solve that on the constituent that doesn't actually live here yet. And so the biggest task, I think, is redistributing those costs to everybody, and because it is everybody's issue.